Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly attract everything they desire into their lives, while others, using the exact same visualization techniques, consistently come up short? What if I told you that the secret isn't about visualizing harder or writing endless gratitude lists, but lies hidden in the laws of quantum mechanics that are operating in your brain right now? Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial areas at the intersection of science and spirituality, Fae, a realm that researchers are desperately trying to understand. We're going to explore the hypothesis that manifestation practices might actually be an expression of quantum entanglement at the level of consciousness. And the evidence we're about to analyze, well, it might genuinely surprise you. Picture this familiar scenario. You start thinking about someone you haven't seen in years. You focus on them, visualize their face, replay old conversations in your mind. And at that exact moment, the phone rings, Faye, and it is them. Sure, it could be simple coincidence, but what if I told you that quantum physicists have discovered particles that behave exactly this way at the subatomic level, instantly responding to each other across impossible distances without any visible communication channel? This phenomenon isn't some New Age fantasy. Albert Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, because quantum entanglement contradicted everything he believed about how the universe should work. According to his understanding, objects shouldn't be able to instantly influence each other across space, and information shouldn't travel faster than the speed of light. Yet quantum entanglement demonstrates exactly this, Faye, and it has been confirmed in laboratories around the world thousands of times. Let's slow down here. This is where it gets intriguing for anyone who has ever tried to manifest their desires into reality. The quantum world operates according to principles that are strikingly similar to those described by manifestation teachers for generations. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until they're observed. The very act of measurement changes reality. And most importantly, consciousness appears to play a fundamental role in determining what becomes real. Now, I understand what you are thinking. We've all heard people try to use quantum physics to justify everything from crystal healing to psychic abilities. Most of the time, it is complete nonsense. Scientists are rightfully frustrated when quantum mechanics gets distorted and oversimplified to support ideas that have nothing to do with genuine quantum theory. But what if there is something deeper here? What if the connection between consciousness and matter isn't pseudoscientific fantasy, but a genuine convergence of principles, Fae, how our minds work, aligning with the laws that construct reality at the most fundamental level? Let's be clear about what we're investigating. We're not talking about magical thinking or abandoning scientific rigor. We're examining whether legitimate principles of quantum mechanics might provide a foundation for understanding how focused intention could influence physical reality. The implications of this possibility are genuinely staggering and deserve serious study, not hasty dismissal or blind faith. We begin with a phenomenon known as quantum superposition. In the quantum world, particles don't possess definite characteristics until they're observed. An electron doesn't spin clockwise or counterclockwise. Fae, it spins in both directions simultaneously until someone measures its state. This isn't a limitation of our measuring instruments. This is how reality works at the microscopic level. Particles exist in what physicists call a superposition of all possible states, until observation collapses this wave of possibilities into one concrete state. Think about what this means. Reality at its most basic level isn't fixed and predetermined. It is fluid, probabilistic, and exists as infinite potential until consciousness interacts with it through the act of observation. sound familiar to those who've studied manifestation techniques. But quantum superposition is just the beginning. The real revolution in our understanding comes with quantum entanglement. When two particles become entangled, they form a single quantum system. Measuring the state of one particle instantly determines the state of the other, regardless of the distance separating them. If you change the spin of one particle, its entangled partner will react immediately, even if it is on the opposite side of the universe. Einstein was so opposed to this idea that he spent years trying to disprove it. He advocated for what is called local realism, phi, the concept that objects can only influence their immediate surroundings and possess definite properties whether they're being observed or not. Quantum entanglement violates both these principles. Particles influence each other at any distance, and their properties remain undefined until the moment of measurement. Einstein was convinced that quantum mechanics was incomplete and believed in hidden variables that could restore common sense to physics. He famously said, "God does not play dice with the universe," expressing his rejection of quantum theory's probabilistic nature. However, it seems God does play dice phi, and in ways that would have shocked Einstein. In 1964, physicist John Bell formulated a mathematical proof known as Bell's theorem. This theorem showed that no physical theory based on local realism could reproduce all the predictions of quantum mechanics. The choice was stark. Either particles can instantly influence each other across vast distances, or reality doesn't exist independently of observation. There was no third option. For decades, Bell's theorem remained a purely theoretical concept. But in the 1980s and 90s, experimental physicists began testing it directly. In landmark experiments, scientists generated entangled particles, separated them by enormous distances, then measured their properties simultaneously. The results violated Bell's inequality time and again, definitively confirming the reality of quantum entanglement and disproving Einstein's local realism. For these fundamental investigations, physicists Elaine Aspect, John Clauser, and Anton Zeilinger were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2022. Their work irrefutably demonstrated that our universe operates according to quantum mechanical laws that often seem paradoxical. It turns out particles can instantly affect each other regardless of distance. Reality is probabilistic rather than predetermined, and the act of observation plays a crucial role in shaping what becomes real. This brings us to the concept of manifestation, focusing consciousness on a specific goal and visualizing it until it materializes in the physical world. While skeptics dismiss such practices as magical thinking, let's ask this question: what if consciousness itself operates according to quantum principles? Consider the role of observation in quantum physics. The measurement process doesn't simply detect pre-existing characteristics of a particle phi, it actually creates them. Before measurement, any particle exists in superposition, possessing all possible properties simultaneously. The observer's decision about what parameter to measure determines which of these potential properties becomes reality. This puzzle is known as the measurement problem. When and how does the superposition of multiple states collapse into one definite state? Many physicists prefer not to delve into this question, focusing on the mathematical framework of the theory. Nevertheless, several distinguished scientists, including Eugene Wigner and Henry Stapp, have suggested that consciousness might be the key to understanding wave function, collapse phi making, the selection between possible futures. It is important to understand that these aren't mystical speculations, but serious attempts by scientists to solve fundamental problems in quantum theory. The standard Copenhagen interpretation merely states that a system exists in superposition until measurement, but doesn't explain why measurement causes collapse. The consciousness hypothesis offers a possible solution. Fey consciousness serves as the bridge between the world of quantum possibilities and our familiar classical reality. But does this prove manifestation is real? Not necessarily. Quantum effects are observed at scales trillions of times smaller than objects in our everyday world. Even if we assume consciousness can influence quantum systems, this doesn't guarantee its ability to affect macroscopic reality. However, this is where quantum entanglement might play a crucial role. If consciousness can influence quantum systems, and those systems can be entangled with macroscopic objects, then theoretically there is a channel for consciousness to affect the physical world. This chain of reasoning contains many assumptions, but it can't be called absolutely impossible, especially in light of recent discoveries. Recent experiments have successfully demonstrated quantum entanglement at increasingly impressive scales. Scientists have entangled molecules containing thousands of atoms, mechanical oscillators visible to the naked eye, and even ensembles of millions of particles. The boundary between quantum and classical worlds is becoming increasingly blurred. Currently, some scientists are investigating the possibility of quantum coherence existing in biological systems. The human brain, containing approximately 86 billion neurons, represents a colossal system. If even a small fraction of these components can maintain quantum properties, the brain might be a gigantic quantum processor. This raises an exciting question. Might consciousness itself be a quantum phenomenon? Could our subjective experience of the world result from quantum processes occurring in the brain? And if so, could focused intention, through entanglement, affect quantum systems outside our bodies? These questions are at the cutting edge of modern science, at the intersection of physics, neurobiology, and philosophy. While we don't have definitive answers yet, the depth of these problems demands serious scientific investigation. Today, we can confidently state that quantum entanglement is a real phenomenon. Consciousness somehow participates in quantum measurement processes, and the boundary between quantum and classical worlds isn't as clear as previously assumed. Does this provide a scientific basis for manifestation? The question remains open, but it deserves not prejudiced denial, but genuine scientific interest. After all, if consciousness can truly influence matter, this suggests we're not passive observers, but active participants in creating reality. However, let's not rush to conclusions. To approach answers to these fundamental questions, science must thoroughly understand the mechanisms of quantum entanglement, precisely determine consciousness's role in quantum physics, and discover whether quantum effects can have measurable impact on our macroscopic world. The research ahead will force you to reconsider your views on the very nature of reality. We'll analyze experiments that appear to confirm consciousness's ability to affect matter. We'll examine the theoretical mathematics underlying the possibility of manifestation, and understand why statements from some Nobel laureates sound more like mystical speculation than materialist science. But first, we need to address a concept that could fundamentally transform your perception of reality. The task isn't to artificially fit scientific data to mystical doctrines, but to recognize that the universe operates according to laws that ancient sages intuitively grasped thousands of years before physicists described them mathematically. Specifically, the mathematical framework embedded in quantum mechanical equations remarkably parallels ancient teachings about consciousness and reality. The mathematical model of quantum entanglement reveals extraordinary properties of information. When particles become entangled, They don't transmit data to each other in any conventional sense. There is no signal transfer, no energy exchange phi, in fact, no mechanism explainable through classical physics. Instead, they possess a shared property that scientists call quantum information. This is a special type of connection that transcends our familiar concepts of space and time. The revolutionary aspect of this discovery is that quantum information doesn't obey the speed of light limitation. Measuring one entangled particle's parameters causes instantaneous reaction in its partner, whether it is located a meter away or on the other side of the galaxy. This phenomenon overturns our understanding of cause and effect and indicates that reality is founded on non-local principles where physical distance is irrelevant. Now let's recall how manifestation practitioners describe their methods. They speak of mentally connecting with the desired result, as if it were already achieved, and transcending the gap between present and future through consciousness focus. According to them, clearly formulated intention establishes instant connection with the desired outcome, however distant or unattainable it might seem. Remarkably, quantum mechanics' mathematical structure describes exactly this type of non-local connection. The wave function, containing all probable states of a quantum system, exists in space until observation causes its collapse phi, selecting one specific outcome. This process happens instantaneously across its entire extent. But most intriguingly, it is not random. It is a direct response to measurement, and any measurement implies contact with either a conscious observer or a recording device. This suggests that consciousness, or at minimum, the process of information acquisition, plays a key role in selecting which of many potential realities becomes actual. This idea forms the basis of a concept proposed by one of 20th century physics giants, John Wheeler, the participatory universe. According to his theory, observers aren't passive recorders of pre-existing reality, but active participants in creating the reality that emerges during observation. In other words, we don't simply discover what already exists. We help make something real. Wheeler's conclusions, based on quantum mechanics and relativity theory, remarkably echo what manifestation masters have said for centuries. Observer and observed are inseparably linked. Consciousness doesn't exist separately from the material world. There is constant dynamic interaction between them that continuously determines and shapes existence. This concept of participatory reality finds confirmation in some of the most precise and rigorous physics experiments. Experiments known as quantum delayed choice erasers show that decisions made by an observer in the present can retroactively influence events that have already occurred in the past. Particles behave as if they somehow know how they'll be measured in the future, even when that measurement happens after their state has been recorded. Such experiments undermine our usual views of causality. If observation in the present can affect the past, then the relationship between consciousness and reality is far more mysterious than we might suppose. Time itself becomes an active participant in the process, with conscious choice extending its influence both into the future and back into the past, throughout the entire space-time structure. Now let's project this knowledge onto manifestation practices. If we assume that consciousness can affect quantum systems, and moreover non-locally and even retroactively, then focused intention could indeed alter the chances of needed events appearing in the material world. Here, probability becomes the central concept, since quantum mechanics doesn't provide precise predictions of specific outcomes, but only calculates the probability of their occurrence at the moment of measurement. The wave function determines probability amplitudes for each possible state of the system. These set the odds for realizing one outcome or another. The crucial aspect is that this probabilistic nature isn't a consequence of our incomplete knowledge about hidden parameters, but represents a fundamental property of the universe itself. This means that true uncertainty is built into existence, and conscious observation helps transform it into concrete experience. Thus, manifestation techniques might be effective by influencing these quantum probabilities. Concentrated intention could shift their distribution in favor of needed scenarios, thereby increasing the chances of favorable outcomes at the moment when the quantum wave function collapses into our familiar classical reality. While this approach doesn't guarantee 100% achievement of goals, it could substantially improve the odds of success, and this possibility finds confirmation in mathematics, the most precise physical model ever created. Quantum field theory presents our reality as derived from probability fields that permeate all space-time. These fields exist in constant fluctuation, generating and destroying virtual particles, creating zero-point energy that fills the vacuum and forming the very foundation for all physical phenomena. There is a hypothesis that consciousness can interact with these quantum fields in ways we're only beginning to understand. If consciousness is based on quantum processes, and these processes can affect probability amplitude fluctuations in quantum fields, then consciousness could literally tune the universe to obtain desired results. Let me pause here. This matters more than it sounds. Recent research in quantum biology demonstrates that living systems actually do employ quantum effects to increase their efficiency. For example, photosynthesis appears to use quantum superposition to simultaneously analyze multiple energy pathways, allowing selection of the most efficient method for converting light into chemical energy. Bird navigation relies on quantum entanglement in special proteins that respond to magnetic fields. And our sense of smell possibly depends on quantum tunneling effects that allow receptors to distinguish molecular vibrations. These discoveries prove that quantum effects aren't limited to sterile physics laboratories. They're actively operating within living organisms, including, probably, the human brain. For a long time, it was believed that the warm, wet, and chaotic environment of biological tissues should instantly destroy quantum coherence. However, life appears to have found ways to not only maintain but also utilize quantum phenomena, even in such complex conditions. The human brain processes data through neural networks, but each neuron contains microtubules, protein structures that, according to some scientists, can support quantum computations. If these microtubules truly maintain quantum coherence, the brain could perform quantum information processing on a colossal scale, potentially establishing connection with quantum fields extending throughout space. It is precisely at this point that consciousness intersects with quantum mechanics. And this intersection could completely overturn our understanding of both phenomena. If consciousness is a product of quantum processes in the brain, and these processes can become entangled with quantum systems beyond it, then focused attention could indeed influence physical reality through quantum mechanical channels. Evidence supporting this possibility comes from various, albeit controversial, areas. Psychokinesis experiments, despite their ambiguity, demonstrate statistical effects that consistently repeat across decades of research. Random number generators appear to respond to the intentions of nearby observers, and global consciousness projects reveal correlations between world events and quantum generator readings located across the planet. None of these effects individually provide sufficient weight or reliability to serve as proof. However, their consistency suggests something real might be behind them. If consciousness possesses the ability to influence quantum systems even slightly, these small effects could be amplified many times through the complex dynamics of chaotic systems, potentially leading to macroscopic changes that we perceive as incredible coincidences. The butterfly effect vividly shows how tiny changes in initial conditions can cause enormous differences in final results. If consciousness can even slightly shift quantum probabilities, these shifts could cascade through the complex network of causes and effects forming our reality. As a result, desired outcomes that previously seemed astronomically unlikely could become surprisingly achievable through the accumulation of countless quantum influences. This brings us to the very essence of manifestation. The universe appears designed to require our participation. Consciousness plays an active role in determining which possibilities will be realized in reality. Quantum entanglement provides a mechanism for non-local influence beyond familiar concepts of space and time, and quantum mechanics' probabilistic nature opens a path through which focused intention can affect the probability of desired events. But the picture becomes even more surprising when we turn to the intersection of quantum mechanics and information theory. Information may be more fundamental than matter and energy. Some physicists today hypothesize that reality consists entirely of information processing, with particles and forces being merely manifestations of patterns in quantum information flow moving through space-time networks. If consciousness is fundamentally connected to information processing, and reality consists of informational patterns, then the boundary between observer and observed may simply disappear. Consciousness doesn't exist separately from reality, observing it from outside. Rather, it is reality itself, becoming aware of itself through localized centers of data processing that we call brains. This approach transforms manifestation from mystical ritual into a natural consequence of reality's informational nature. Focused intention creates coherent informational patterns in consciousness, which then spread through quantum information networks, affecting probabilistic structures that determine which possibilities become our real experience. This process operates through mechanisms that theorists call quantum error correction. These mechanisms preserve information integrity despite surrounding noise and decoherence effects. Biological systems appear to have developed complex correction protocols that allow them to maintain coherent quantum states much longer than classical physics textbooks predict. If human consciousness uses similar quantum correction mechanisms, it might be capable of maintaining coherent intention states long enough for their accumulated quantum effects to influence macroscopic reality. The key factor here becomes developing mental discipline that allows maintaining integrated attention focus despite the constant noise and distractions of ordinary consciousness. Ancient meditative traditions seem to have intuitively understood these principles thousands of years before quantum mechanics appeared. They developed sophisticated practices for stabilizing attention, maintaining single-pointed concentration, and achieving states that transcend ordinary mental activity. These practices can be viewed as early technologies for optimizing consciousness's interaction with quantum fields. Modern neuroscience is beginning to confirm some of these ancient insights. Research on the brains of experienced meditation practitioners shows fundamental changes in neural network organization, including strengthened coherence between different brain regions and increased synchronization of neural oscillations. Perhaps these effects reflect the development of quantum computational abilities in the brain's microtubule networks. The convergence of ancient wisdom and quantum physics suggests that manifestation techniques work by training consciousness to achieve and maintain quantum coherent states that can influence probabilistic structures throughout space-time. The more integrated and stable the intentional focus becomes, the more powerful the quantum effects, and the more reliable the practice results. However, achieving genuine quantum coherence of consciousness requires much more than positive thinking or visualization. It demands mental discipline refined through years of practice, the ability to maintain unwavering focus despite internal and external interference, and the wisdom to align personal intentions with nature's deeper laws. This brings us to an important distinction between authentic manifestation practices and their simplified versions that predominate in popular culture. True manifestation isn't about demanding reality submit to ego desires. Its essence is learning to consciously participate in the quantum processes that continuously create the world, and aligning personal goals with the universe's natural tendency toward increasing complexity, beauty, and consciousness. The universe appears to possess an inherent developmental vector that some physicists call the arrow of complexity. Over billions of years, reality has evolved from the simplest particles to atoms, molecules, cells, organisms, and finally to self-awareness. This evolutionary process seems to favor configurations that support higher levels of information processing and more complex forms of organization. Manifestation methods that harmonize with evolution's general vector can draw energy from quantum flows, naturally striving toward complexity and consciousness development. Intentions directed toward personal growth, creative expression, healing, and helping others may find support in quantum fields that favor evolutionary progress. Meanwhile, intentions born from fear, greed, or desire for control risk encountering quantum resistance, since they contradict the universe's natural evolutionary flow. We might suppose that the quantum field is naturally attuned to realizing what serves the common good, supporting individual aspirations only when they align with collective development directions. This means successful manifestation requires not only knowledge of quantum mechanics, but also a certain ethical maturity. Consciousness capable of affecting quantum fields through focused intention must possess sufficient wisdom to apply this power responsibly. As we know, great power brings great responsibility, and the ability to shape reality through quantum consciousness manifestation may become humanity's greatest test of moral maturity. We stand on the threshold of understanding how consciousness interacts with quantum reality, and we face a choice that could determine our evolution's future path. Can we develop these abilities with wisdom and compassion to create a more harmonious and beautiful world? Or will we allow selfish desires to distort our connection with quantum existence's foundation? The answer to these questions should be sought not only in scientific laboratories and theoretical calculations, but in our hearts and minds. The universe appears to listen closely, responding to the quality of consciousness we bring to our interaction with quantum fields. What we choose to manifest and the motives behind our choices may determine whether we become conscious co-creators of reality or remain forever trapped in the illusion of separation from quantum existence's source. Recent experiments reveal quantum effects extending into areas that inspire awe even in the most experienced physicists. Recent experiments conducted at the University of California demonstrated something that fundamentally changes our understanding of information flow in reality. Scientists created quantum systems where future measurement appears to not simply correlate with past events, but causally influence them. This has staggering implications for the idea of manifestation. Researchers discovered that when quantum particles exist in certain entangled states, the decision about how to measure them in the future actually retroactively determines their past properties. It appears as if particles look into the future to learn how they'll be observed, then correspondingly adjust their past behavior. This means the timeline isn't fixed. Fate is dynamic and observer-dependent. Now let's transfer this principle to human consciousness and manifestation practices. If consciousness operates through quantum mechanisms, then intentions you form today might literally propagate into the past, affecting the chain of events that led to your current circumstances. Your future-focused aspiration could retroactively change probability junctions in the past, creating converging timelines where desired outcomes become increasingly likely in the future. This isn't science fiction fae. It is an extrapolation from real experimental results, reproduced many times in laboratories worldwide. Quantum delayed. Choice eraser experiments unambiguously show that future decisions can influence past events in quantum systems. The only remaining question is whether consciousness participates in these retrocausal effects at the macroscopic level. However, the story becomes even more mysterious when studying a phenomenon physicists call quantum discord. This form of quantum correlation, distinct from entanglement, but potentially even more powerful, arises naturally in practically all quantum systems, unlike entanglement, which requires special conditions for creation. It represents a fundamental way of exchanging quantum information that permeates reality at all levels. Recent research suggests that quantum discord is the mechanism allowing quantum effects to manifest not only at micro but also macro levels. While individual quantum correlations are quite fragile and easily destroyed by external noise, quantum discord can maintain stability even in warm and noisy biological systems. Perhaps it is the missing link allowing consciousness to influence physical reality through quantum channels. The mathematical description of this phenomenon reveals something astounding about the nature of interconnections. Classical correlations require direct causal relationships. If two coins always land on the same side, there must be some physical force explaining their synchronous behavior. However, quantum discord creates correlations without requiring direct interaction between systems. The interconnection itself is built into information structure, existing independently of physical causality. This suggests that consciousness influences reality not through direct force, but through quantum informational correlations that exist beyond familiar spacetime. Your focused intention doesn't push physical events in the desired direction. Instead, it creates informational quantum patterns in spacetime's probability landscape that correlate with desired results. This process can be compared to tuning a radio. You don't create radio waves, but by tuning to a specific frequency, you choose which of the already existing signals becomes available for reception. Similarly, consciousness probably isn't the direct creator of reality. However, by achieving special coherent quantum states, it can determine which of the potential possibilities in the quantum field will transform into our real experience. The fundamental principle here is that information precedes matter. Before any physical event can occur, its informational matrix must already be embedded in the deep quantum structures forming reality's foundation. Consciousness is hypothesized to function by resonating with these pre-existing informational structures, thereby increasing the probability of their materialization through quantum correlation. It is precisely this resonance model that clarifies why manifestation practices emphasize emotional harmony and inner sensations, rather than simple mental visualization. Emotions may serve as the connecting link between consciousness and the informational field. When you deeply feel as if the desired has already become reality, you probably enter quantum resonance with the informational blueprint of that outcome in the field of all probabilities. This resonance model is supported by recent discoveries in quantum biology. Scientists have established that living systems use quantum coherence to simultaneously analyze multiple possible development paths, then settle on the most productive one. For example, plants demonstrate practically 100% photosynthetic efficiency, precisely because they mechanically probe all available energy trajectories before choosing the most optimal one. There is a hypothesis that the human brain might work according to a similar quantum sampling principle. Instead of sequentially sorting through options, consciousness, using quantum superposition, simultaneously studies multiple problem-solving paths, then collapses them to a single most resonant variant. Such a mechanism could explain why intuitive insights come suddenly in finished form, as if information were instantly obtained from some quantum database. It is at this moment that the connection with manifestation becomes particularly deep. If we assume consciousness can mechanically investigate different branches of reality, then focused intention could direct this process toward your needed results. By maintaining a clear goal and emotional harmony, you actually create a kind of quantum selective pressure that favors paths leading to what you envision. This mechanism is described by quantum theorists as environmental selection. Just as natural selection favors the survival of the most adapted organisms, quantum selection might favor those probabilities that most precisely match informational templates created by coherent consciousness. In other words, the universe doesn't obey orders, but may naturally amplify intentions that have reached the necessary level of quantum coherence. This model explains why manifestation more often appears through chains of coincidences and lucky opportunities rather than direct supernatural materialization. Quantum selection doesn't violate physics laws, but influences which of the potentially possible scenarios ultimately realize. New perspectives suddenly open. The right people appear in life, necessary resources are found. All this happens through natural processes that are, however, quantum mechanically biased in favor of your coherent aspirations. And here the time factor begins to play a crucial role. Quantum systems remain in superposition precisely until the moment when observation forces them to take concrete form. However, the moment of this collapse isn't random. It is determined by both the system's own information processing needs and the observing consciousness's coherent state. By maintaining stable concentration on a goal, you probably can delay quantum state collapse until circumstances align optimally for the desired outcome. Ancient meditative teachings seem to have intuitively grasped this temporal principle, developing practices for immersion in consciousness, states that exist beyond familiar time flow fei in the so-called eternal now, or timeless presence. Such states might create ideal conditions for interacting with quantum superposition, giving consciousness the opportunity to influence reality formation before probabilities collapse into concrete experience. Remarkably, Modern neurobiology is beginning to confirm these ancient intuitive insights. Research shows that master meditators can achieve states of global neural coherence, where different brain areas begin working synchronously, forming unified informational patterns. This coincides with their reports of expanded consciousness and mystical experiences. If we accept that the brain is a kind of quantum processor, then such coherent states can be considered optimal environments for its interaction with quantum fields. Global neural level coordination might generate quantum coherence at the microtubule level, which could create quantum correlation fields extending beyond a single brain. This idea finds indirect confirmation in recent experiments, showing that quantum connections can persist at macroscopic distances if the system achieves necessary coherence. Scientists have succeeded in creating entangled states uniting billions of particles and maintaining quantum connection between them at visible distances, despite external interference and decoherence. The secret lies in achieving collective coherence, when multiple particles begin behaving as a single quantum object. If human consciousness is capable of similar collective coherence within one brain, or even in a group of people, it could generate quantum correlation fields operating in surrounding space. Such fields could alter probabilistic structures over significant territories, increasing chances of synchronistic events for everyone falling within their influence zone. The proposed collective coherence model offers possible interpretation of group manifestation effects and mass consciousness phenomena. According to it, when multiple people concentrate on similar intentions, their individual coherent quantum states can merge into unified fields that amplify manifestation effects and extend them beyond any individual's capabilities. The Global Consciousness Project represents evidence supporting this hypothesis, as random number generators distributed worldwide show notable deviations from randomness during major world events when millions of people's attention focuses on the same thing. Observations show that quantum noise tracked by these generators becomes more structured, as if collective mind introduces order into the quantum vacuum itself. However, the concept of collective coherence raises serious questions regarding individual autonomy and free will. If consciousness operates through quantum fields extending beyond individual brains, our thoughts and intentions might be much more interconnected than we're accustomed to believing. Considering quantum correlation effects, the boundary between self and others begins to blur. This interconnectedness might explain why manifestation practices so often emphasize serving others and striving for common good. Intentions aimed exclusively at personal gain might conflict with the broader consciousness field and encounter quantum interference. Meanwhile, intentions serving universal good can be amplified through collective resonance effects, making their realization more likely. Modern quantum information theory research states that information isn't created or destroyed, only transformed from one pattern to another. This information conservation principle can be applied to consciousness and manifestation, fundamentally changing our understanding of personal responsibility and ethics. If informational patterns created by your consciousness persist in quantum structures, then every thought, intention, and emotional state becomes an integral part of reality's informational field. These patterns don't disappear without trace, but continue existing as probabilistic shifts in quantum fields, constantly influencing new experience formation. Such information conservation suggests that manifestation might be cumulative and operate over extended time periods. Each moment of focused intention adds information to quantum patterns corresponding to the desired result. Over time, These accumulated informational structures might reach a critical threshold after which manifestation becomes not simply highly probable, but practically inevitable. This process can be compared to crystal growth in solution. Individual molecules don't form a crystal instantly, but they create informational prerequisites that guide future molecular crystallization structures. Eventually, when enough information accumulates, crystal formation happens spontaneously and quickly. Similarly, consciousness can seed quantum fields with informational patterns that gradually shift reality toward desired configurations. Manifestation doesn't happen instantly, but establishes an informational foundation that makes it increasingly probable as suitable conditions emerge. Such a gradual accumulation model explains why manifestation practices require consistency and persistence rather than expecting immediate results. Each practice contributes by adding quantum information to field structures connected with your intentions. While effects might not be immediately visible, they create probability momentum that eventually reaches manifestation threshold. Recent quantum mechanics experiments shed light on the surprising connection between information and energy. Informational patterns can store and release energy in ways that transcend classical thermodynamics laws. Quantum informational systems can operate with near-perfect efficiency, extracting useful energy from informational structures with minimal losses. If consciousness truly functions based on quantum information mechanisms, it might be capable of directing colossal energy volumes using relatively small informational investments. The quantum vacuum contains incalculable zero-point fluctuations, constantly generating and destroying virtual particles in empty space. Under normal conditions, this energy is inaccessible to classical systems. However, quantum informational processes might draw from these reserves through resonance effects. Manifestation might work by creating informational patterns that resonate with vacuum energy fluctuations, extracting real energy from virtual processes. This extracted energy could then influence physical systems, making desired outcomes energetically more favorable than random alternatives. This process doesn't violate conservation laws, but merely utilizes energy sources invisible to classical physics. Like photosynthesis extracting solar energy through quantum coherence, consciousness might extract energy from vacuum fluctuations through informational resonance mechanisms. However, accessing vacuum energy this way would require an extraordinary level of mental coherence and stability, since the quantum vacuum exists in temporal and energy scales infinitely distant from our everyday experience. Interacting with vacuum processes might require consciousness states completely transcending normal human experience. Ancient spiritual teachings describe such transcendent states, fey levels of awareness characterized by absolute stillness, boundless expansion, and merger with fundamental reality. These descriptions can be viewed as phenomenological reports of consciousness, resonating with quantum vacuum processes, and gaining access to zero-point energy, underlying all physical manifestations. Modern physics is beginning to confirm some aspects of these ancient views. Quantum field theory demonstrates that vacuum fluctuations possess characteristics strikingly similar to what mystics called creative emptiness, Fey, the source from which all experience arises. The mathematical framework describing the quantum vacuum parallels paradoxical formulations from mystical literature across cultures, suggesting manifestation practices might be revived consciousness, technology's Fey methods for interacting with reality at its quantum level that indigenous peoples maintained in oral tradition for millennia. If this interpretation is correct, effective manifestation might require something greater than simple understanding of quantum mechanics or mastering visualization techniques. We're talking about profound consciousness transformation that traditional spiritual practices lead to developing awareness capable of functioning at quantum scales. Recent theoretical developments in quantum gravity support the hypothesis about consciousness's fundamental nature. Some models suggest that space-time itself emerges from more basic information processing networks, quantum computational structures that weave reality from pure informational relationships. In that case, consciousness might be a local amplification in these cosmic networks, the point where the universe becomes aware of itself. From this perspective, manifestation becomes not simply possible, but natural. If consciousness is reality's self-awareness mechanism, then focused intention naturally affects information processing, forming our physical experience. The universe doesn't respond to consciousness from outside. Consciousness is the way the universe interacts with itself from within its own creative process. However, such a fundamental view of consciousness carries profound consequences for our understanding of personality and individual existence. If awareness is universal self, knowledge, rather than a collection of separate minds, then the boundary between self and cosmos dissolves in universal unity. Personal manifestation transforms into cosmic self-creation, and individual intention becomes part of a universal creative act expressing itself through local awareness focuses. Thus, the question is no longer whether manifestation works through quantum mechanisms, but whether we're ready for the consequences if it truly does. The answer could change not only our understanding of consciousness and reality, but our very concept of what it means to be human in a universe where thought becomes matter, and intention shapes the foundations of existence. The mathematical framework describing quantum vacuum interactions opens a truth that could fundamentally change your understanding of the mind-matter connection. When physicists calculate empty space's energy density, they conclude that what we call nothing contains more potential energy than all matter in the observable universe. This isn't merely theoretical speculation, but measured reality of quantum fluctuations generating and destroying virtual particles billions of times per second in every cubic centimeter of space. The key point for understanding manifestation lies here. These vacuum fluctuations aren't random noise. They respond to informational patterns in ways that resemble consciousness organizing experience. When quantum systems achieve sufficient coherence, they can direct these fluctuations toward certain outcomes, effectively extracting energy from vacuum to form desired reality configurations. Recent experiments have already demonstrated such vacuum energy extraction in laboratory conditions. Researchers managed to create so-called squeezed vacuum states, where quantum fluctuations become ordered rather than chaotic. While this process requires exceptional control over quantum informational patterns, it proves that information processing similar to consciousness work can indeed access energy reserves hidden in apparent emptiness. If human consciousness functions based on quantum coherence mechanisms, it might well be capable of similar interactions with vacuum energy. States of focused intention described in manifestation practices might represent natural squeezed vacuum states, where coherent consciousness orders quantum fluctuations to support desired results. However, accessing vacuum energy through consciousness would require mental stability levels far beyond ordinary human capabilities. Quantum vacuum processes unfold over time intervals, comprising infinitesimal fractions of seconds, while engaging energy levels incomparable to anything in our everyday world. Interacting with such phenomena would require consciousness states capable of maintaining absolute coherence against our mental activity's unceasing turbulence. This leads to a discovery that could radically alter our understanding of consciousness and reality's nature. Recent breakthroughs in quantum biology demonstrate that living systems regularly achieve and maintain quantum coherent states that would seem impossible from classical physics perspectives. For a long time, it was believed that biological tissue's warm, wet, and chaotic environment should instantly destroy any quantum effects. However, life, contrary to these expectations, has developed unique ways to preserve quantum data processing for periods sufficient to extract substantial benefits. The secret lies in a mechanism scientists call quantum error correction, biological processes that protect quantum information from decay or decoherence. Through these, plants maintain quantum superposition during photosynthesis, allowing simultaneous analysis of multiple energy paths to choose the most efficient, achieving practically ideal performance. Even complex organisms rely on these principles. Birds, for example, navigate using quantum error correction in special proteins that maintain entangled particle states, despite biological chaos. Our sense of smell apparently also depends on quantum tunneling effects that preserve coherence long enough for us to distinguish individual molecular vibrations. Thus, life doesn't simply exist amid quantum effects. It has created sophisticated technologies for their active application. The human brain, in turn, is the most complex known quantum system, containing structures potentially capable of supporting quantum error correction at an unprecedented scale. We're talking about microtubules inside neurons, forming vast networks that, according to some researchers, can provide quantum coherence across macroscopic distances within the brain. If we assume even a small portion of these networks functions at the quantum mechanical level, their information processing capabilities would be truly exceptional. This quantum brain hypothesis offers a probable mechanism for consciousness interacting with reality without violating known physics laws. Coherent quantum states in neural microtubules could become entangled with quantum systems in the environment, creating informational correlation networks extending far beyond individual mind boundaries. Such extended networks could influence probabilistic structures over significant areas through phenomena physicists call quantum steering effects. Your focused intentions wouldn't force reality to change directly, but would guide probability landscapes, determining which potential possibilities realize in real experience. This process is based on informational correlation rather than energy transmission, making it practically impossible to detect with traditional measuring instruments. Steering effects manifest through called non-local correlations, connections existing regardless of space and time. When quantum systems become correlated, they begin instantly exchanging information regardless of physical distance between them. These correlations don't carry energy or signals in classical understanding, but generate mutual influence, transcending familiar causality. Recent experiments have already confirmed quantum steering existence at laboratory distances, showing how measuring one quantum system immediately affects its distant partner's properties. This effect challenges our standard understanding of cause and effect relationships and hints that reality functions through participatory mechanisms where observation actively shapes the observed. If consciousness is truly involved in quantum steering networks, then focused intention could influence the spectrum of possibilities available not only to you, but to other people in your correlation field. Your mental states could literally guide reality perceived by others, making them more predisposed to actions supporting your goals. This model explains why desired outcomes often realize through synchronicity and apparent coincidence, rather than direct supernatural intervention. Quantum correlations don't cancel free will or violate physics laws. They merely shift probabilistic structures toward configurations where multiple people's actions naturally coordinate to achieve common results. This process resembles how bird flocks or fish schools move in perfect harmony without any single control center. Each individual follows simple local rules, but their collective behavior appears guided by invisible intelligence. Similarly, quantum steering could coordinate several people's actions to achieve common goals, with none of the participants conscious of this coordination. However, quantum steering networks' existence raises profound questions about personality boundaries and personal responsibility. If your consciousness is part of correlation fields affecting others' probability landscapes, then your thoughts and intentions acquire ethical weight, extending far beyond personal experience. Mental states you cultivate might shape reality for countless others through subtle quantum mechanical pathways. Recent quantum information theory research reveals even more astounding details about these correlation networks in nature. Informational structures in quantum systems demonstrate so-called holographic properties. All system information can be encoded on its boundaries. This holographic principle appears across various physics areas, from black hole thermodynamics to space-time structure. If consciousness functions through holographic data processing principles, then individual consciousness could contain complete information about larger quantum systems of which it is part. Your personal consciousness might be a local window into universal informational networks, extending through space and time, erasing boundaries between individual mind and cosmic consciousness. Within this holographic model, manifestation works through connecting to universal informational patterns via localized consciousness interface. When you achieve sufficient quantum coherence, your personal awareness synchronizes with these universal informational networks, allowing you to influence reality, not through individual effort, but through resonance with universal creative processes. Ancient mystical teachings seem to have intuitively understood consciousness's holographic nature, thousands of years before quantum mechanics described it mathematically. These traditions describe states where personal identity dissolves into universal consciousness. Human will harmonizes with cosmic mind, and desires manifest through participation in divine creation, rather than selfish aspirations. Modern neurobiology is beginning to confirm some aspects of these mystical descriptions. Brain activity research in experienced meditation practitioners reveals states transcending familiar subject-object division. During peak experiences, neural networks responsible for self-identification reduce activity, while networks connected with universal interconnection feelings become highly active. Such transcendent states might be optimal conditions for consciousness, interacting with quantum fields moments when individual consciousness achieves sufficient coherence for direct contact with holographic informational structures underlying physical reality. In such states, manifestation might happen completely naturally, as consciousness harmonizes with the creative processes continuously forming our world. However, achieving genuinely transcendent states isn't simply a matter of meditative techniques or positive thinking practices. It requires fundamental consciousness restructuring in relation to its own content, transitioning from identifying with thoughts and emotions to recognizing consciousness itself as the unchanging background against which all experiences unfold. Such understanding of awareness as fundamental rather than derivative remarkably parallels quantum mechanics interpretations that place consciousness at reality creation's center. If awareness isn't a product of complex material structures, but the universe knowing itself, then consciousness interacting with reality becomes not simply possible, but inevitable. The consequences extend far beyond personal success, touching questions about the ultimate purpose and direction of cosmic evolution. If consciousness plays a key role in creating reality, then developing increasingly complex awareness forms might be the main driving force of universal evolution. In this paradigm, we learn not to manipulate reality from outside, but to consciously participate in the continuous creation process we're already involved in. This evolutionary perspective poses a critically important question about responsibility accompanying the ability to consciously create reality. If consciousness can truly influence quantum systems, then developing wisdom becomes no less important than mastering techniques. The same coherent states enabling manifestation can be used for both creative and destructive purposes, depending on the user's intentions and values. Recent research in so-called quantum ethics suggests the universe might have built in preference for manifestations, supporting rather than undermining the general evolutionary process. Intentions directed toward increasing complexity, beauty, consciousness, and connection might receive support from quantum fields, while intentions born from fear, greed, or controlled desire might encounter quantum resistance. This ethical dimension of quantum mechanics reflects moral teachings in ancient wisdom traditions worldwide. They consistently claimed that actions performed in harmony with common good receive support from cosmic forces, while selfish actions generate resistance and suffering. Perhaps these teachings were intuitive grasp of quantum ethical principles that science is only beginning to discover. The convergence of ancient wisdom and quantum physics suggests that effective manifestation requires not only technical understanding of consciousness, quantum field interaction, but profound development of wisdom, compassion, and ethical sensitivity. The universe appears designed to support consciousness development, but only when this growth corresponds to global cosmic creation laws. From here emerges perhaps the most fundamental question quantum mechanics poses. If our consciousness can affect quantum structures underlying reality, what is our responsibility for applying this power? And if consciousness truly shapes reality through quantum mechanisms obeying evolutionary ethics laws, what conclusions does this allow about existence's very essence and purpose? Quantum field theory's mathematical framework presents reality as derived from the so-called quantum vacuum, a field of unlimited possibilities that is the foundation of all material world. This vacuum isn't emptiness, but conversely, a focus of creative potential where virtual particles and field oscillations are continuously born. Several modern physicists hypothesize that consciousness serves as the instrument through which quantum vacuum comprehends its own creative power. In this concept, each individual mind is a local center of universal self, awareness, a point where cosmos studies itself through evolving complex forms of conscious perception. With this approach, realizing our intentions becomes a way the universe experiments with its boundless creative abilities. Each effort to manifest desired outcomes becomes cosmic testing of new organization paths, with us as conscious beings serving as its explorers. This model of cosmic self-knowledge clarifies why manifestation is most effective when harmonizing with evolutionary vectors directed toward complexity, beauty multiplication, and consciousness deepening. These tendencies are the natural course of universal creation. If we accept this interpretation, mastering manifestation goes beyond personal self improvement and acquires status as cosmic service. By perfecting our ability to consciously participate in universal creative acts, we become conductors through which existence studies its boundless potential. The responsibility this cosmic mission imposes immeasurably exceeds personal ambitions and lies in our status as conscious co-creators of reality's ongoing evolution, driven by developing increasingly subtle consciousness forms. Modern quantum mechanics experiments reveal ever new facets of consciousness, matter interaction that previously seemed unthinkable. Scientists have recorded quantum phenomena in biological structures at room temperature, discovered quantum interconnection at macroscopic scales, and revealed in living tissues information processing capabilities approaching theoretical maximums. All these discoveries suggest consciousness. Quantum physics interpenetration might be significantly deeper than we previously supposed. The human brain, being the most complex known quantum system, might well possess information processing abilities exceeding our boldest assumptions. If consciousness is indeed a product of quantum phenomena and neural networks, our possibilities for interacting with reality are limited only by our skill in achieving coherent states. However, this might require more than technical knowledge, probably demanding fundamental reconsideration of ourselves and our inseparable connection with comprehensive reality of which we're part. Such harmony requirement leads to the conclusion that manifestation isn't simply a learnable skill, but a holistic way of existing deep attunement to reality, with complete acceptance of our role in eternal creative process. In this light, consciousness, evolution, and manifestation ability prove to be two sides of one coin, a unified process transforming both personal perception and our shared reality. The path to mastering these abilities lies at human knowledge's cutting edge, where centuries-old wisdom meets newest science, opening prospects capable of changing our understanding of what it means to be intelligent beings in quantum creation. In this model, our thoughts, intentions, and consciousness itself are direct participants in those deep creative processes, forming everything we perceive as reality. This story acquires even more astounding character when we turn to studying consciousness itself in special quantum, coherent states. Observing experienced meditation practitioners revealed such brain function patterns that question traditional neurobiology's established concepts. In moments of highest focused awareness, neural networks ordinarily competing with each other begin working in perfect harmony, leading to phenomena scientists called global workspace brain integration. What is astounding is that these synchronized brain states demonstrate properties reflecting quantum entangled system behavior. Different brain areas begin exchanging information practically instantaneously, processing it in ways exceeding familiar neural transmission speeds. Consciousness seems to temporarily overcome its biological foundation limitations and begin functioning according to quantum data processing laws. Research by Dr. Jason Brewer from Brown University documented these states using advanced neuroimaging methods. When experienced practitioners entered deep meditative concentration, their brains demonstrated unique coherence patterns, spanning frequencies usually connected with different consciousness states. Gamma waves responsible for high-level cognitive processing synchronized with theta waves associated with creative insights, and alpha waves, characteristic of relaxed wakefulness. Such interfrequency coherence generates phenomena researchers called hyperbinding. In this state, information from various senses, memory systems, and cognitive processes unites into single holistic experience perceived as much more real and vivid than ordinary perception. Practitioners themselves describe that in such moments reality becomes denser, more responsive, and alive. These subjective reports completely align with quantum mechanics predictions for systems achieving maximum coherence, where separate parts begin acting as unified wholes. The brain temporarily seems to transform into biological quantum computational system. Moreover, recent experiments using highly sensitive quantum sensors registered measurable changes in electromagnetic fields around people entering these coherent states. The biofield phase subtle electromagnetic signature inherent to all living organisms. Phe demonstrates increased orderliness. These changes apparently aren't limited to internal processes, but tangibly influence surrounding quantum environment. For example, random number generators located near meditators show substantial deviation from chaotic distribution, becoming more predictable, with orderliness degree directly correlating with practitioner immersion depth. However, the most amazing discovery concerns time perception transformation in these states. Experienced practitioners speak of achieving timeless awareness, where past, present, and future merge into unified eternal, now filled with boundless potential. Neuroimaging data confirms this Phe neural networks responsible for standard time processing, quiet while areas connected with spatiotemporal integration show hyperactivity. Such altered perception might indicate consciousness gaining access to reality levels where quantum superposition exists before wave function collapse. If consciousness can function outside familiar time flow, it probably can influence quantum probability structures before they form into concrete experience. Thus, practitioners don't simply observe reality, but become participants in pretemporal creative acts, selecting possibilities for subsequent materialization. Quantum chronodynamics experiments confirm this hypothesis. Physicists discovered quantum systems can exist in temporal superposition, simultaneously existing in several time flows until observation reduces them to single timeline. Just imagine the consequences. Your consciousness right now might simultaneously experience several probable future versions existing in quantum superposition.